Cameron and Lauren. A Love Story by Barron Darby. They were the couple that made millions of strangers believe in the impossible, that you could fall deeply in love with a person you had never seen, that two hearts could meet across a wall of frosted glass in a windowless room the size of a living room and somehow recognize each other before a single eye ever met. Lauren Speed and Cameron Hamilton became the undisputed king and queen of a real-life fairy tale, a couple whose love seemed almost too perfect to be true. And behind the flawless smiles and the relationship goals hashtags, behind the candles and the cake and the champagne of a televised wedding, there was a story that only the two of them knew, a 4-year silence filled with waiting rooms, a crumpled manifestation journal in a bedside drawer, a father's grave under an open sky, a baby arriving a little earlier than planned, but exactly on time. This is how it really happened. This is their love story, not as the cameras caught it, and not as the world guessed at it, but the way they would tell it to each other, years later, on a quiet porch, with a son sleeping in a bassinet between them. She would start. She always started. And then he would take her hand and finish her sentence, the way he had learned to do somewhere between the pods and the altar, between the needles and the nursery, the way people do when they have chosen each other not just once, not even twice, but every single day. This is that story. Part 1. Chapter 1. Lauren, before the pods. I was 30 years old and I was tired. Not the kind of tired that a nap fixes. Not the kind of tired where you come home from a long week and pour yourself a glass of wine and let your shoulders drop an inch. I was the other kind of tired. The tired that comes from dating in a city full of men who do not mean what they say, who text after midnight with one thumb, who call you beautiful and mean something else entirely. I was tired of small talk. I was tired of first dates that felt like job interviews, where I sat across from a stranger who wanted to know what I did for a living before he knew what made me laugh. I was tired of the way a phone buzzes during dinner and pulls a man's eyes away from yours mid-sentence. I was tired of putting on a face. But I will tell you a secret. Underneath all of that tired, I was still a hopeful woman. My daddy made sure of it. Bill Speed was the kind of father who looked at his daughter like she had hung the moon and then taught her how to reach for it anyway. He called me his baby girl when I was 30, the way he had called me his baby girl when I was 3. He was a Southern man with a deep laugh and a slow way of saying exactly the thing you needed to hear, usually just when you had given up on hearing it. He was my best friend. He was my cheerleader. He was the first man I ever loved. And when I told him, sitting at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee between us, that I was thinking about doing something crazy, that I had been invited to be a part of a new kind of show, a kind of experiment, where you talked to people through a wall for 10 days and tried somehow to fall in love with them before you saw their face. When I told him all of that, my daddy did what my daddy always did. He put his big warm hand over mine and he said, "Baby girl, if your gut is telling you to go, you go. And if you come back with a ring, we will deal with that too." My mom and my sister were not so sure. They had their reasons. I would be going off the grid. No phone, no social media, no family group chat where I could check in and tell them I was alive. I would be trusting a team of strangers with my heart and my schedule and my peace of mind. And I was a Black woman heading into a situation where I had no idea who was on the other side of that wall. I had never dated outside my race. I had never thought I would. The men in my life had been the men I had grown up with, the men my daddy would recognize, the men who knew what it meant to pass a cornbread dish around a Sunday table. But my heart kept whispering, something about this is for you. I had prayed about it. I had journaled about it. I had made a list in a leather notebook I kept on my nightstand of everything I wanted in a husband. Not the silly list, not the list about shoulders and eyes and salary. The other list, kind, patient, funny in a quiet way, a man who would laugh at my jokes before he told any of his own, a man with a good heart and a clear head, a man who wanted to be a father as much as I wanted to be a mother, a man of faith, a man who would stay. I added one more line at the bottom of that list in a different color of ink, like I was almost embarrassed to write it. A man who would see me before he saw anything else, before he saw what I looked like, before he saw my hair or my skin or my outfit or my career. A man who would meet me in the dark and pick me anyway. When I closed the notebook, I sat very still for a long time, and I heard my daddy's voice in my head, soft as a Sunday morning. You go, baby girl, you go. So I went. I packed a small suitcase. I kissed my mama on the forehead. I hugged my sister twice, once for her and once to remind myself why I was coming home. I told my daddy that if I did not come home in a couple of weeks, that meant I was probably engaged, and he laughed and shook his head and said, "Girl, you are something else." I got on a plane with a whole heart and an open mind, and no idea that a man named Cameron was on another plane, heading to the same city, carrying his own list. I did not know yet that the first time I ever heard his voice, I would feel something in me go very still, the way a room goes still when the right song starts to play. I did not know that I was about to meet the love of my life through a wall. I did not know any of it, but my daddy did. I think somehow my daddy already did. Chapter 2, Cameron, the scientist who believed in love. People hear me say I am a scientist, and they make a face, a small face, a quiet one, like they are recalculating something about me. I understand it. A scientist is supposed to be careful and cautious and slow to commit. A scientist is supposed to test a hypothesis and measure a variable and write a report in a stiff voice that does not use the word heart unless it is talking about a muscle. A scientist is supposed to ask how and why and for how long and at what confidence interval. But here is the secret about scientists. A lot of us are romantics. A lot of us got into this line of work because somewhere deep down, we looked up at the sky when we were kids and decided the universe was a love letter we had not finished reading. We chose equations because we wanted to stand closer to the mystery. We chose rigor because we were in awe. I was that kind of kid. I grew up in Maine, in a small town where winter came early and stayed late, and I read books under a lamp while snow built itself into hills outside the window. I loved knowing how things worked. I loved how a cell divides, how a protein folds, how a signal travels down a nerve and becomes the feeling of a hand on your arm. I thought the body was a small miracle and the brain was a bigger one. I also loved poetry. I did not tell many people that. I kept it quiet the way you keep a candle in your pocket. But I loved the way a line of poetry could do what an equation could not, which is take a feeling and put it in a form you could carry. I was 30 years old and I had a good life. I had a career I was proud of. I had friends who knew my laugh. I had a couple of plants on my windowsill, all of which I had kept alive. I had a bookshelf with a dent in it, where I leaned my shoulder when I read standing up. I had a kind face, a red beard, and a quiet smile, and I had been told, politely, on many occasions, that I seemed like a nice guy, like a catch, like a good one. What I did not have was her, whoever she was. I had tried. I had tried the apps and the setups and the coffee dates with friends of friends. I had tried the bar on a Thursday and the bookstore on a Saturday, the gym and the coffee shop and the dog park, and none of it had worked. Not because the women were bad, not because I was bad either, I hope. Just because the whole machinery of modern dating seemed designed to distract everyone from the one thing that actually mattered, which was whether two people could sit in a room together and keep talking until the sun came up. So when a producer sent me an email about a strange new show, a show where you would not see the other person, a show where you would sit in little rooms in the dark and talk, really talk, about your mother, about your faith, about what you wanted out of this one life. I read the email twice. Then I read it again, and I laughed out loud in my apartment, alone, because a part of me, the poet part, the scientist part, the kid in Maine part, all of me, recognized exactly what that email was. It was an invitation to stop performing. I told myself I was going to try it, just to see, just to experience it. If I met someone, great. If I did not, I would have a story to tell for the rest of my life. I packed a small suitcase. I said goodbye to my plants. I told my parents what I was doing, and my mother was wary, the way mothers are, and my father was quiet, the way fathers are, and I promised them both I would be myself. Whatever happened, I would be myself. That was the only rule I gave myself, the only hypothesis. Be the man you actually are, and see if she can find you in the dark. I boarded a plane. I did not know that a woman named Lauren was on her way to the same city, carrying a list in her own leather notebook, asking God for a man who would see her before he saw anything else. I did not know that in a few short days I would say something over a phone intercom in a tiny soundproof room, and I would hear a laugh come back, and that laugh would reach into my chest and make a fist around my heart. I did not know any of it, but I had packed a ring, just in case. Chapter 3, Lauren, a voice through the wall. The first thing you learn when you walk into those pods is how unbelievably strange it is not to be able to see someone who is 6 feet away from you. The room is small. It is the size of a nice closet. If a nice closet had a couch and a glass of wine and a velvet wall, there is a wall in front of you, and behind that wall is another little room, exactly like yours. And inside that other little room, there is a man. You cannot see him. You cannot see his hair, or his hands, or the way he sits when he is nervous. You cannot see if he is tall or short, or if his shirt is wrinkled, or if he is the kind of man who looks at his own reflection in the doorknob before he comes in. You can hear him. That is it. You can hear his voice, and whatever the voice gives away. In the real world, when you meet a man, your eyes do half the work before your mouth opens. You see him, and you size him up, and you have already written half the story. In the pods, all of that is gone. It is like dating with the volume turned all the way up and the picture turned all the way off. It is terrifying. It is also, quickly, the most honest thing I have ever done. The first day, I talked to a lot of different men. Some of them were funny. Some of them were trying too hard. Some of them were there for a reason I could feel right through the wall. And the reason was not love. I would sit on my side of the velvet, crossed legs, glass of wine sweating in my hand, and I would listen, and I would smile politely, and I would know, not him, not him, not him. And then a voice came through. The voice was soft, a little shy. Not the kind of voice that fills up a room, the kind of voice that makes you lean in, the kind of voice that sounds like it is choosing its words because the words matter. "Hi," he said, "I'm Cameron." And I said hi, and he said something about the weirdness of the whole setup. A small joke, the kind of joke a kind man makes because he wants you to be comfortable. And I laughed, because it was actually funny. A quiet kind of funny. A funny you have to have listened for. And then we started talking. I do not remember everything we said that day. I remember pieces. I remember him telling me he was a scientist. I remember something lighting up in me, because I had always liked smart men. And I do not mean men who think they are smart. I mean men who are actually paying attention to the world. I remember him asking me a question about my family and then listening to the answer all the way through without interrupting. I remember him laughing at something I said, and his laugh was a small surprise, like he had not laughed like that in a while. I remember, very clearly, the moment I first felt the air change. I had told him something about my daddy, something small, about a Sunday dinner when I was a little girl, and my daddy saying grace, and me peeking through my fingers because I loved the look on his face when he was talking to God. I do not know why I told him that on the first day. I do not usually lead with my daddy. I had only met this man 10 minutes before, but something about the dark and the velvet and the way he was listening made it okay. When I was done, there was a little silence on his side of the wall, and then he said softly, "The way you say a thing you want to say, exactly right." He said, "Your father sounds like the kind of man I would love to meet one day." Not, "Your father sounds nice." Not, "Tell me more about him." Not any of the things a man says when he is trying to pass the time until you stop talking. He heard me. He heard what I had just said without saying it. He heard that this man was the center of my life. And he told me, without telling me, that he was already thinking about meeting him. I did not let on. I did not want to get ahead of myself. I was not going to fall in love through a wall on the first day. I was grown. I was 30. I had come here with my eyes wide open, even if my eyes were not really the point. But when I walked back to my room that night, I sat on the edge of my bed and I looked at my leather notebook on the nightstand, and I did not open it. I did not have to. I could feel the list I had made underneath the cover, humming. A man who would meet me in the dark and pick me anyway. I turned off the lamp. I lay down in the quiet, somewhere, in another building, in another pod, in another tiny room with a velvet wall. A man named Cameron was probably doing the exact same thing, lying down, thinking, going over our conversation in his head, turning each line over like a smooth stone. "Hi," he had said. "I'm Cameron." I closed my eyes. "Hi," I said back to the ceiling. "I'm yours." I did not know it yet, not in the way you know something, but I knew. Chapter 4, Cameron, Day 3, The Clarity. By the third day, I knew. I want to be careful when I say that, because I have met people who will tell you they knew on day 1, and maybe they did, and I respect that. I am not going to tell you I walked into those pods and felt a bolt of lightning the first time Lauren's voice came through the wall. That is not how it happened for me. It was quieter than that. It was a slow thing, a building thing. It was a scientist's kind of knowing. The first day I hung up our call and thought, wow, she is interesting. The second day I hung up and thought, wow, she is funny and smart, and she does this thing with her voice when she is being sincere, where she slows down and the sentence sits on the air for a second before it lands. By the third day, when I walked into the pod and sat down and heard her say my name, I felt something in my chest reorder itself. Not lightning, architecture, like a floor had been put in, where before there had only been air. Here is what I want you to understand, because I think it is the part that gets lost in the way these stories are told. People think a connection like that is a feeling, a rush, a thing that overtakes you. And sure, it is partly that. But mostly for me, it was a series of small, careful observations that kept confirming the same hypothesis. I noticed that when she asked me a question, she actually waited for the answer. Not just in that polite way people wait. She waited with her whole attention. I could hear it in the way she did not rush to fill the silence. She wanted the real answer, not the press release. I noticed that when I asked her a question, she gave me the real answer. She did not perform. She did not turn herself into a highlight reel. She told me the truth, even when the truth was a little uncomfortable, or a little soft, or a little hard to pin down. I noticed that when she talked about her family, her voice went warm in a way that could not be faked. I noticed that when I made a joke that was not very good, she laughed anyway, because she had figured out that I was nervous and she was being generous with me. That was the part that did me in. Not the flirtation, not the spark, the generosity. She was kind. You can learn a lot about a person in the dark, and one of the things you learn first is whether they are, at their center, kind. Not polite, not charming, not good at saying the right thing. Kind. The way a person is kind when no one is watching. Lauren was kind in her bones. I went back to my room on the third night, and I sat on the floor with my back against the bed, which is a thing I do when I need to think, and I went over it in my head, like a checklist. I asked myself the questions I had promised myself I would ask before I let myself go any further. Could I build a life with this person? Could I be a father to a child with her? Could I sit across from her at a kitchen table for 50 years and still want to hear what she was about to say? The answer to all three questions was yes. A clean, quiet yes. No hedging. No maybe, no on the other hand. That was when I decided. Understand, I had not told her yet. I had not even told her I was falling in love with her. We were still, officially, getting to know each other. I was still one of several men she was talking to in the pods. I did not know who her other conversations were with. I did not know how they were going. I did not know if she was sitting on her side of the wall at that exact same moment, going over the same checklist with a different name at the top. I just knew what I was going to do. I was going to keep showing up. I was going to keep telling her the truth. I was going to keep listening, really listening, the way she listened to me. And at the end, if she gave me the chance, I was going to ask her to marry me. Not because I was sure it would all work out. I am a scientist. I know better than to promise certainty. I am also, underneath it, a romantic, and a romantic knows that love is not about certainty. It is about commitment. It is about choosing a person, eyes closed, and then spending the rest of your life opening your eyes a little wider to them every day. On day 3, I closed my eyes. On day 3, I chose her. She did not know it yet, not in the way you know something with proof, but I knew. And the floor that had been put in underneath me held. Chapter 5. Lauren. The proposal. He asked me on the 8th day. The way he asked was so Cameron it makes me laugh now. It was not the kind of big, loud fireworks proposal you see on TV. It was not orchestrated. It was not a speech he had been rehearsing. It was him, in that quiet, careful voice of his, telling me a true thing. He said, "Lauren, I have been thinking about this for a while. And I want to be very clear with you. I am not playing. I did not come here to try love on like a jacket. I came here for something real, and I believe with every part of me that you are that something real. I know this is crazy. I know we have not seen each other. I know we have been in these little rooms for 8 days. I also know how I feel, and how I feel is that I want to marry you. I want to spend my life with you, Lauren. Will you be my wife?" I was sitting on my side of the velvet wall, with my feet tucked up under me, and a half-empty glass of water on the little table beside me. And when he finished the sentence, I did not say anything right away, not because I was unsure. I want you to hear that clearly, because I have told this story before, and sometimes people think I hesitated because I was not ready. I was ready. I had been ready for 3 days. I did not say anything right away because I was trying to breathe. Because there is a way a prayer gets answered that knocks the wind out of you. Because I had been praying for this man in some form for years, since I was old enough to know what kind of man I wanted, since I had sat at my daddy's kitchen table and said out loud the kind of husband I wanted to find, since I had opened my leather notebook and written, in my own handwriting, the kind of love I hoped would come looking for me. And here was a voice from behind a wall telling me that love had found me. I started crying. I did not sob. I cried the way you cry when something is very, very beautiful and very, very true at the same time, quietly, with my hand over my mouth, with my eyes closed, so nothing about the room could distract me from the voice on the other side of it. And then I told him yes. I said yes. I said I want to be your wife. I said I have been hoping for you. I said you are answered prayer. I heard him exhale. You know that exhale, the one a person does when they have been holding their whole body tight for days, and now, finally, they can sit down. He exhaled, and then he laughed. It was a laugh of pure relief, of pure joy, of a man who has just been told, against every reasonable odds, that the universe is on his side. He said, "Oh, thank God." He said, "I cannot wait to see you." He said, "I love you, Lauren." It was the first time he had said it that plainly. No hedging, no joke at the end, just the naked sentence. "I love you, Lauren. I love you too, Cameron." We sat there for a long time on either side of that wall, saying the word love back and forth to each other, trying it out, letting it land. I was laughing and crying and shaking my head at the ceiling because I knew in my bones that my daddy had been right. I also knew in my bones that my mother was about to be very, very surprised. When I finally walked out of the pod that night, my legs were a little wobbly. My face was wet. The lights in the hallway felt too bright. A producer asked me how I was feeling, and I opened my mouth, and I said, "I am engaged." I said it out loud. "I am engaged to a man I have never seen." And I started laughing because of course it was going to be a man I had never seen. That had been the whole point. Somewhere in the building, a red-bearded scientist from Maine was saying the same sentence to a different producer. I am engaged to a woman I have never seen. We had done the impossible thing. We had fallen in love in the dark. All that was left now was to see each other. Part 2. Chapter 6. Cameron, the Silhouette. I will tell you exactly what I was thinking on the morning of the reveal. I was thinking, do not run. I had been told by a producer, a soft-spoken woman with a clipboard, that when the doors to the plexiglass opened, I could walk, or I could stand still, or I could do whatever felt natural. She said, "You will know what to do in the moment." She said, "Just breathe." I had not slept. I want to be honest about that. I had laid in my little bed in my little assigned room, with the ring I had picked out sitting on the nightstand beside me in its small white box, and I had gone through every possible scenario my scientist brain could invent. What if she is not attracted to me? What if we stand there, staring at each other, and the feeling does not translate into a face? What if she is disappointed? What if I am? I did not think I would be. But what if? What if the voice and the person do not match up, and we have to stand there, awkwardly, and pretend we did not feel the dissonance? I had proposed to this woman. I had told her I loved her. I had made promises through a wall, and now I was going to see her, and she was going to see me, and everything we had built in those little pods, all of it, had to survive the first look. I got up, I got dressed, I shaved the parts of my beard I shave and left the parts I leave. I put on a button-down shirt, I put on cologne, and then I was embarrassed about the cologne, and I washed some of it off, and then I was embarrassed about that too. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time and tried to see what she would see. A man, average height, red beard, kind face, I hoped. A scientist from Maine, far from home, about to meet his future wife in a hallway. I told myself the thing I had told myself on day 3. Be the man you actually are. Let her meet that man. They walked me to the doors. The doors were 2 frosted plexiglass panels set into a wall, and behind them was nothing. A corridor, a blank space. You could not see through them. You could only see a shape, a silhouette, a suggestion. Someone stood on the other side, and my eye snagged on a shadow that was her. I stopped breathing. I do not mean that poetically. I mean my body literally forgot. I stood there, and my chest did not move, and my mouth was slightly open, and I looked at the shape that was Lauren Speed, the woman I had promised to marry, and my scientist brain, which had been busy making cautious predictions for 30 years, gave up, shut off, handed me over to whatever part of me was in charge at that moment. The poet part, the main kid, the romantic. The doors slid open. I want to be honest about the first second of seeing her, because I have told this story a few times, and I do not think I have ever quite captured it. It was not a slow motion moment. It was not a swelling orchestra moment. It was a moment where the world just tilted. There she was. She was standing there in a soft dress, and her hair was down, and she was smiling a small, nervous, hopeful smile. And she was, without exaggeration, the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. I thought, for a split second, that they had put a cardboard cutout in the hallway as a joke, a stand-in, because this could not be real. She could not be real. Things like this do not happen to men like me. And then she moved. She took a small step forward, the way you do when you are testing the ground, and that small movement broke the cardboard cutout illusion in a single second, because cardboard does not take small, hopeful steps. I started to run. I did. I admit it. I took about 3 steps at a jog, because my body had decided without consulting me that we were done being 6 feet apart. And then I saw her not running. She was walking, slowly, with her hand on her heart. And I slowed down too because I wanted to match her. I wanted us to arrive at the same speed. We met somewhere in the middle of the hallway. She reached for my beard first. Her hand went to the side of my face and she said, "Oh my God, he has a red beard." And then she laughed, a real laugh, a shaky laugh, a laugh with tears at the back of it. And I touched her face too with both hands, the way you touch a face you have been imagining for a week. And I said something I do not even remember. I think I said her name. I think I said, "You are beautiful." I think I said, "I love you." She said it back. "I love you, Cameron." She said my name the way she had been saying it in the pods, with that slight lift on the first syllable, and it sounded different coming out of her mouth with her face in front of me. It sounded earned, like we had walked somewhere together to get to that sound. We held each other in that hallway for longer than I can remember. I know they had cameras on us. I know they had to, for the show, and I tell you honestly, I forgot every single camera. They could have turned the lights off. They could have opened all the doors. I would not have noticed. In my head, I was saying, over and over, a sentence so plain it almost embarrassed me. "This is her. This is her. This is her." And the poet in me, the old kid from Maine with a candle in his pocket, finally wrote the line he had been trying to write his whole life. The hypothesis holds. I reached into my pocket because we had not actually done the ring part yet. I went down on one knee, right there in that hallway, and I asked her again, out in the open this time, face to face, with no wall between us. "Will you marry me?" She said yes before I finished the question. I slid the ring onto her finger. I stood up. I kissed her. And the plexiglass doors, those poor plexiglass doors, did not have to hold up another thing that day. Chapter 7. Lauren, the red beard. Girl, I am going to tell you the truth. The first thing that went through my head when the doors opened and I saw that man was not, "Oh my God, he is so handsome." I mean, he was. I saw that part. I saw the cheekbones and the kind eyes and the careful way he was standing, the way a good man stands when he knows a moment is holy. I saw all of that. But the first thing in my head was, "Oh my God, he has a red beard." I am not going to pretend I was expecting a red beard. I had been picturing 1,000,000 different Camerons for 8 days, and not one of them had a red beard. I had been picturing a brown-haired Cameron, a blonde Cameron, a Cameron with a clean-shaven face, a Cameron with a full dark beard. My imagination had been very busy, and it had gone in a lot of directions, and none of those directions had been ginger. So when the door slid back and I saw the red beard, for one full second, my brain went, huh. And the second thing that went through my head was, oh my God, what are my mama and my sister going to think? Because let me say this plainly, I am a Black woman. I had never dated outside my race. I had not been raised to rule it out. I had just not been down that road. The men in my life, from the boys I had liked in school to the men I had gone on real dates with, had all been Black men. My daddy was a Black man. My grandfathers were Black men. My mama, my sister, my whole family, the whole table at Sunday dinner was full of Black faces. And here I was, standing in front of a man from Maine who had a red beard like a fisherman in an old painting. I had one heartbeat of thinking, what am I doing? And then, as quickly as that heartbeat came, it went. Because he smiled. It was not a big smile. It was a nervous smile. It was the smile of a man who had been up all night and who had rehearsed a few things and who knew that rehearsing was probably useless. It was the smile of a man who was about to find out if the person he loved him back. And I recognized him. That is the only way I can put it. I recognized him. Not because I had seen him before. Obviously I had not. But because I had been hearing him for 8 days. I knew his voice. I knew the little pause he took before a sincere sentence. I knew the way he cleared his throat when he was about to say something that mattered. I knew how he laughed. And the face in front of me, when he smiled, was the face of the voice I already loved. The rest of the hallway stopped existing. He was not a white man in that moment. He was not a Black man. He was not a red-bearded man. He was Cameron, my Cameron, the one I had been talking to, the one who had told me his father drove an old truck and who had asked about my daddy's Sunday grace, and who had told me in that soft, serious voice that he wanted to be my husband. I walked toward him. I was walking slow on purpose. Part of me wanted to run, but I thought, girl, let him come. Let him walk to you too. Let this be something you meet in the middle for. So I walked with my hand on my heart, because my heart was doing a thing, and I did not want it to fall out. He started running, a little run, like a boy running to the porch. And then he saw I was walking, and he slowed down, and we met somewhere in the middle. And the next thing I knew, my hand was on that red beard, and I was laughing through tears, because I could not believe how soft it was, and how warm his face was, and how his eyes got when he looked at me. Like I had given him a gift, like I was the gift. He told me I was beautiful. He said it like he had been waiting to say it, like the word had been on the tip of his tongue for 8 days, and now he could finally let it out. You are beautiful, Lauren. I said his name back to him, and I told him I loved him, and I meant it all the way down to the soles of my feet. He got down on one knee, right there, in front of everybody, and he asked me again, out loud this time, with no wall, with no pretending. Will you marry me? I said yes before he had finished the sentence. Yes, yes, yes. He put the ring on my finger, and the ring was beautiful. But honestly, I did not even look at it for a minute, because I could not stop looking at his face. This is the part of the story that people laugh at. My mama, when I called her from Mexico, said, "Baby, a what?" A red beard. My sister, when she saw the pictures, about passed out on the floor, she said, "Lauren, girl, you did not tell me." I told her I did not know until the doors opened. None of us did. But let me tell you something. The second that beard touched my cheek, something in me settled. The 30 years of looking, the list in the leather notebook, the waiting, the wondering, all of it, quiet. My mama taught me to listen to the quiet. When a room goes quiet like that, and it is a good quiet, that is your answer. That was my answer. Chapter 8, Cameron, Mexico. They took us to Mexico that same week. It is one of the strange things about the way this whole experiment was built. You meet the person, you fall in love, you get engaged, and then, within a day or two, you are on a plane with a suitcase, headed for a resort in another country, where you are going to live with the fiancé you have just met face to face. 12 other couples are there. The villa is shared, the pool is loud, and somewhere in the middle of all of that, you are supposed to figure out, as fast as possible, whether you can actually share a life with this person. I remember stepping off the plane with Lauren on my arm and thinking, okay, now it starts. Because here's the thing, in the pods, we had been in a perfect controlled environment. No phones, no distractions, no mornings, no dirty laundry. No difference between what I ate for breakfast and what she ate for breakfast. We had been at our best all day, every day, for 8 days. We had been the highlight reel of ourselves. Mexico was where we had to be real. We had to share a bathroom. We had to wake up next to each other and see what each other looked like with morning hair. We had to eat meals together and take walks together and navigate a room full of other engaged couples who were also, in their own way, trying to figure out what they had just agreed to. Some of those couples, I could see pretty fast, were not going to make it. There was an awkwardness in the room, a slight static, where one person would try to touch the other, and the other person would flinch half an inch, a quarter of an inch. You could see it. Lauren and I did not have that problem. I want to be careful here, because I know there are young women who read these kinds of stories, and I want to be respectful to my wife and to myself. Let me just say this. The physical part of our relationship was not a question mark. From the first second in that hallway, when she put her hand on my face and I put mine on hers, our bodies understood each other. When we got to Mexico, that did not change. If anything, it got clearer. But here is the part I want to dwell on. The part I think is actually the love story. We liked each other. Not just loved, liked. Because love and like are not the same thing. Plenty of people love their partners and do not particularly like them. Plenty of people are tied up in knots of love with someone whose conversation they would not choose at a dinner party. We liked each other. She was fun. She was easy. She was the kind of woman who, when a silly song came on by the pool, would start dancing before she knew anyone was watching. She was the kind of woman who would catch my eye from across a crowded brunch table and make a tiny face that said, "Can you believe these people?" And we would have a whole conversation in 2 seconds without opening our mouths. She was the kind of woman who, at the end of a long day, would climb into bed and pat the spot next to her and say, "Scientist, come tell me something weird about the universe." And I would tell her about the way a bumblebee should not be able to fly, mathematically, and she would listen with her eyes half closed, smiling, and then she would say, "That is the best thing anybody has told me all day." She made me feel like the smartest man in the world, and the funniest man in the world, and the handsomest man in the world, and she did not even have to try. She just looked at me like that. Mexico was not a honeymoon, it was a laboratory, and in the laboratory we thrived. We ran into trouble sometimes. Of course we did. There were other couples around us who were in full-blown drama, and that drama did spill into our space a few times. There were moments, walking around that villa, where Lauren and I had to look at each other and say, "Let us make sure we do not catch what is going around. Let us make sure we keep our own peace." She was so good at protecting our peace. She was the one who would pull me into a quiet corner and say, "Baby, we are not in that. We are in this. We are in our thing." She had this almost bodily knowing of what was ours and what was not. I learned from her. I started matching her energy. One night, we were sitting on a balcony, and the stars were ridiculous, the way stars are when you are out of the city and in love at the same time. And she said to me very quietly, "I cannot wait to go home with you, not to your home, not to my home. Home." Like we had already decided where that was, like it was not a house, but a person. I said, "I cannot wait either." I remember looking at her profile against those stars and feeling what I can only describe as 30 years of loneliness close up and become irrelevant, not erased. You cannot erase loneliness, but it became a thing that had happened to a younger version of me, a version of me that was already fading. I had been that young man once, a lonely kid in Maine, a scientist in a cold apartment, a single man on many, many dates that went nowhere. That man had been carrying a candle through a long, dark hallway. This woman next to me was the door at the end of the hallway, and the door had opened. I reached over and took her hand. She let me hold it. We sat in that quiet for a long time, under those ridiculous stars. We did not talk for another half hour. We did not need to. We had already said everything we needed to say in the pods. The rest of our life, I realized, was going to be exactly this: sitting next to each other, not needing to perform, not needing to fill the silence, being the home each other came to at the end of every day. I had proposed in a pod. I had proposed in a hallway. I proposed again quietly, in my own head, on that balcony in Mexico, to the same woman, for the third time, and my own head said yes, like it had been waiting. Chapter 9, Lauren, Meeting His World. I knew my family was a soft landing. What I did not know, until I flew up there, was what kind of landing his family would be. Cameron is from Maine. If you have never been to Maine, let me explain it to you this way. Maine is the kind of place where the trees know your name before the people do. It is beautiful. It is cold. It is quiet. The sky is bigger there than it is other places, and the quiet is a different kind of quiet than the quiet we have in the South. In the South, the quiet is warm. It hums. In Maine, the quiet is tall. It holds its breath. We drove up to his parents' house in a little rental car, and the whole time my heart was doing that thing where it wanted to make sure I knew it was still there. Cameron had his hand on my thigh, and every so often he would look over at me and say, "You okay, baby?" And I would nod and smile at him and keep my breathing even. I had been a black girl before. I had been a black woman for a while. I had spent my whole life around my own. I had also spent my whole life, of course, in a country where I sometimes walked into rooms where I was the only one who looked like me. I knew how to carry myself. I knew how to read a room. I knew how to feel when a room had read me back. I did not know what his parents were going to see. I was their son's fiancé of 2 weeks, a girl he had met through a wall. I was from Atlanta. I was black. I was not the version of me they might have imagined for their only son when they used to picture his wedding. I was, for them, a sudden thing, a new thing. I am going to tell you something, and I want the young women who are reading this to hear me clearly. His mother was lovely, not performative lovely, not polite lovely, not I have to be nice because my son is watching lovely. She was lovely the way good people are lovely, which is to say, she just was. When we pulled up, she came out to the car. She had on a simple sweater and her hair was down, and she had made a pot of something on the stove. I could smell it when I stepped out, like I was being welcomed by the house itself. She walked right up to me, and she did not hesitate, and she did not stiffen, and she did not give me the kind of hug people give when they are checking a box. She said, "Lauren, I have heard so much about you. Come inside, honey. It is cold out here." Honey. She called me honey on the first hello, and I am telling you that one word did something to me that I carry with me to this day. I saw, right there on the driveway, that this woman had decided, the moment Cameron had told her about me, that she was going to love whoever loved her son. Period. Full stop. No adjectives. His father was quieter. He hugged Cameron first, the way Maine fathers do, with a hand on the shoulder and a single slap on the back, and then he turned to me and he gave me a small, serious, sincere smile, and he said, "Welcome." He reached out and shook my hand, and his hand was warm and rough, and he looked me in the eye while he did it, and that look too I carry with me. They led us inside. We ate the thing on the stove. "Lauren, you need to eat," his mother said, like she was already making a habit of feeding me. We told them the story of the pods. They laughed in the right places. Cameron's mother put her hand on her heart when I told her about the reveal. His father shook his head and smiled at his plate and said, "Well, if that is not something." That night, I went upstairs with Cameron. I sat on the edge of the little guest bed, and I cried. And I do not cry easy. Cameron knelt down in front of me, and he put his hands on my knees, and he said, "Baby, what is it? What is wrong?" I said, "Nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong at all. That is the thing." I said, "Your mother called me honey." He did not fully understand at first. He just held my hands. He waited. He let me gather myself. I said, "I was so scared, Cameron. I was so scared of how this part was going to go. I was scared of walking into a room where I was a surprise. I was scared of being the thing people had to get used to. And your mama came out of that house and she hugged me like I was hers, and she called me honey, and I did not have to earn it." He closed his eyes. He put his forehead on my knee. He said, "They are good people, Lauren." He said, "They are my people, and now they are your people." I nodded. I wiped my face. I told him I loved him. He climbed up on the bed with me, and we lay there, in that quiet Maine night, with the big tall sky holding its breath outside, and I thought about the word honey, and the word people, and the word home. A few days later, my daddy got on a plane and came up to meet Cameron's parents. My mama came too. They had dinner around that table. I sat between my daddy and Cameron's father, and I watched those two men try to figure each other out. A black Southern man and a quiet Maine man. Both of them fathers of an only daughter and an only son. Both of them proud. Both of them scared to death that their baby was about to get married to a stranger. They figured each other out. They really did. My daddy at one point looked across the table at Cameron's father and said, "We make good kids, huh?" Cameron's father smiled into his coffee. He said, "We sure do. That was the first family dinner of our new family. I will remember that dinner as long as I live, as the moment I understood that I was not just marrying Cameron. I was joining a tribe, and the tribe, as it turned out, was willing to grow." Part 3. The Wedding. Chapter 10. Cameron. The Altar. Here is what nobody tells you about getting married 35 days after you meet someone. It is not actually about the wedding. The wedding, when it happens, is lovely. There is a dress and a suit, and people throwing things and everyone making speeches. There is a cake. There is a first dance. There are lights and photographs and a DJ who calls you by the wrong name once before he finds his footing. All of that is nice. All of that is worth it. All of that is what you will look at in 10 years on a hard drive somewhere and think, wow, we were so young. But the wedding itself, the altar part, is not what you remember. What you remember is the moment before. What I remember is standing at the front of that room, with my father a few feet behind me, and looking down the aisle at a closed set of doors. And behind those doors, I knew, was Lauren, my Lauren. The woman who had laughed at my bad jokes in a pod. The woman who had put her hand on my face in a hallway. The woman who had eaten my mother's stew in Maine and cried about the word honey. She was back there, behind those doors, in a dress I had not seen, with her daddy on her arm, about to walk toward me in front of everyone we loved. And I had a split second, the way you have a split second, where I thought, am I really going to do this? I do not mean that in a dramatic way. I do not mean I was wavering. I want to be clear about that, because I know how it can sound. I mean the question that every person asks themselves at the front of an aisle, if they are honest. Am I really, truly willing to promise this one person everything, knowing, as a scientist knows, that I cannot predict the future, knowing that life is long, knowing that the person at the back of the room is about to become my permanent +1, my co-pilot, my witness, for the rest of whatever this is? I asked myself the question, and my chest went warm with the answer. Yes. Yes, I am. Yes, I want to. Yes, this is the woman. Yes, this is the life. Yes, I have not one, not a single one, of those small reservations that people try to talk themselves out of at the altar. I have the opposite of reservations. I have certainty, the kind of certainty I usually do not trust in myself, because I know how slippery certainty can be. But this certainty is a different kind. It is not loud. It is not insisting. It is quiet, the way Lauren is quiet. It is sitting at the back of my ribs, like a dog at a door. The doors opened. She stepped out. I want to tell you something, and I want to tell you honestly. I have seen women in wedding dresses. I have been to other people's weddings. I have admired, the way anyone does, the effort and the artistry. I was not prepared for the sight of my wife in her dress. I was not. She was. She was radiant, not in the cliché way, in the literal way. There was light on her face, inside of her skin, that had nothing to do with the lights in the room or the windows in the chapel. There was light coming out of her. I looked at her face, and I looked at her daddy's face beside her, and I saw the two of them walking toward me, and my eyes went hot. I had not expected to cry. I had told myself very clinically, Cameron, you are a scientist. You are composed. You will not do the weepy groom thing. You will stand there with dignity, and you will wait. Lauren started crying first, and she was laughing while she cried, and her daddy was squeezing her arm, and she was mouthing something to me like, "We are doing this." And my composure left me like a polite guest. It just excused itself from the room. I started crying too. My best man put his hand on my shoulder. My father in the first row was nodding at me, the way my father nods. "Go on, son. It's okay. Go on." She got to the front. Her daddy kissed her on the cheek, and then he looked at me, hard, in that Southern father way, and he did not need to say anything. I nodded at him. He nodded back. He placed her hand in mine. I will tell you, as long as I live, I will remember the weight of Lauren Speed's hand being placed in mine by Bill Speed. Not because it was heavy. It was not heavy. Lauren's hand is small. It was the opposite of heavy. It was a giving. It was a man handing me the most precious thing he had and asking me, without asking me, to take care of it the way he had. I took her hand. I said a promise to her father, not with my mouth, with my eyes. "I have got her, sir. I have got her." The ceremony happened. The officiant said words. We said words back. We said the usual words, the old words, the words that have been said at weddings for 1,000 years. Words about sickness and health, and good and bad, and richer and poorer. I said them, and as I said them, I thought, I mean every single one of these. I did not know it yet, but I was going to have to mean them. Maybe more than a young groom expects to. She said I do. I said I do. We kissed. Everyone we loved stood up and cheered. The rest of the day is pictures. It is confetti in my beard. It is Lauren's laugh on the dance floor. It is my mother dancing with her new daughter. It is my father, who does not dance, dancing once, very carefully, with Lauren's mother. It is Bill Speed, standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching his daughter in my arms and nodding. That nod, too, I remember. I want you to know something about that nod. I did not know that night that Bill Speed would be taken from us a few years later. I did not know his nod would have to last me the rest of my life, that I would replay it in my head in a cemetery with my wife crying on my shoulder. That night, I just knew he had given me his daughter and that he trusted me and that we were a family now. That was enough. That was the wedding. Chapter 11. Lauren. I do. My daddy walked me down that aisle. I want you to understand how much that sentence means. I know a lot of women walk down aisles with their fathers. I know it is common. I know it is beautiful for most of us. What I am telling you is that my daddy and I had been walking each other somewhere our whole lives, and that aisle was just the last of many aisles we had walked together. He had walked me to the first day of kindergarten, with my new backpack and my pigtails, and my hand swallowed up in his. He had walked me across the stage at my high school graduation, and then again at college. He had walked me through heartbreaks and through bad jobs and through a couple of bad choices I do not need to get into here. Whenever a girl needed her daddy, I had one. That aisle was just the new one. We stood behind those doors, together, and he took my hand, and he said, "Baby girl." I said, "Yes, Daddy." He said, "You ready?" I said, "Yes, Daddy." He said, "You sure?" I looked at him. I had prepared myself for that question. I had told myself that he was going to ask me. I had told myself I would not cry. I had told myself I would just smile at him and nod and hold his arm and walk. That was the plan. The plan lasted about 2 seconds. Because when I looked at my daddy standing there in his suit, with his tie a little crooked, with his jaw trying to hold itself still, I saw what I had not fully seen until that exact moment. I saw that he was letting me go, not dramatically, not in a final way, but in the way fathers have to let their daughters go, the way you loosen your hand around a kite string when the wind is right. He was going to let me walk to another man, a man he barely knew, a man he had met 3 times, a man with a red beard, and he was trusting me, and he was trusting Cameron, and he was trusting God. I burst into tears, right there, behind the doors. Beautiful plan, ruined. He wiped my face with his thumb the way he had wiped my face at kindergarten. He said, "Stop that, girl. You are about to walk down an aisle. You cannot be out here looking a mess." I laughed. He laughed. I got myself together. The doors opened, and there was my husband. Not my fiancé anymore. Already my husband in my head, before I had even said the words. He was standing at the front of that room, with his red beard trimmed up, in a suit that fit him nice, and his whole face was shining. He saw me, and I saw him, and it was the pods all over again. The hallway all over again. You again. It is you again. It is you every time. My daddy and I started to walk. I do not remember the walk. I remember flashes of faces. My mama crying into a handkerchief. My sister grinning at me like a crazy person fanning herself. Cameron's mother, the one who called me honey. Cameron's father smiling small. Friends from the show, friends from home. People I had loved my whole life. People I had loved for a week. All of them standing up for this thing. When we got to Cameron, my daddy lifted my veil. He kissed my cheek. He whispered to me, "Baby girl, I love you." I whispered back, "I love you, Daddy." He put my hand in Cameron's. I will never forget his hand letting go of mine. Something about that handoff. Something about the physicality of it. Something about a father's hand sliding away and a husband's hand closing around yours. I have since watched Cameron's hand do that again and again through a lot of things he will have to carry me through. The day I lost my daddy, years later, Cameron's hand was around mine the same way it was that day, exactly the same grip, like a man taking responsibility. We said our vows. Cameron cried first. I do not want to brag on him too much, because he is a private man, but he cried first, and he did not try to hide it. He looked at me, and he said his whole vow through a broken voice, and my heart about busted. Then I said mine. I said, "I pick you, Cameron Hamilton. I pick you in the pods. I pick you in the hallway. I pick you in Maine. I pick you right here. I pick you for the rest of our life. I will pick you on the good days. I will pick you on the hard days. I will pick you when you are tired and I am tired and neither of us feels picky. I will pick you on the days when all we have to give each other is the scraps. And I will pick you on the days when we have the whole pie." I said, "I love you." I said, "I do." He said, "I do." The officiant said, "You may kiss your bride." Cameron smiled at me, the same nervous, sweet, careful smile from the hallway, and he kissed me, and the whole room stood up, and I swear the sky outside heard us and started clapping too. At the reception, my daddy grabbed me for a dance. He held me the way he had held me when I was a flower girl at my aunt's wedding, when I used to stand on his shoes and we would move in slow circles to whatever song. He said, "Baby girl." He said, "You chose well." He said, "I am going to be here as long as I can to watch this." I did not know that night what those words were going to mean later. I could not yet hear that my daddy was measuring his days. Even then, in a way I was not ready to understand. He had already begun, in some quiet inner room of himself, to hand me over fully. Not just to Cameron, to the next part of my life. All I knew was that I had the best daddy in the world and the best new husband in the world, and my cheeks hurt from smiling. I danced with both of them that night, my daddy and my husband. I danced with the two men I loved most. I did not yet know the math that was coming, that one of them would walk with me only a few more years, and the other one would walk with me forever. I only knew they were both there. That night, they were both there. "I pick you," I had said to Cameron. I should have said it to my daddy too. "I pick you." I pick both of you. Thank you for holding me up. Part 4. The Quiet Years. Chapter 12. Cameron, Becoming Us. After the wedding, we went home. Home at first was just a word. We rented an apartment in Atlanta because Lauren was from there and because the light was better there than in Maine. And we started the slow, unglamorous project of becoming a married couple. I want to spend a minute on this because I think it is the part of love stories that gets skipped. The good part, the unsexy part, the daily, regular, quiet part. We had to figure out how to share a bathroom for real. Not vacation bathroom, real bathroom. Who hogs the counter? Whose towel goes where? Who leaves the cap off the toothpaste? We had to figure out what to do about my habit of reading in bed and her habit of falling asleep with the light on. We had to figure out how to grocery shop without losing our minds. We had to figure out what we were going to do about money, about holidays, about whose family we were going to spend Christmas with, and whose Thanksgiving, and what our own traditions would be, the ones that were just ours, the ones our kids would grow up thinking were normal. It was work. It was the best work I have ever done. I will tell you the thing I did not expect. The thing I did not expect was how easy the hard stuff got, because we had learned in the pods how to talk. We had learned how to sit across from each other and say what we actually meant. So when we hit a rough patch early on, some small domestic argument about a couch, of all things, I watched us slip into the rhythm we had built through a wall. She said what she felt. She did not embellish it. I said what I felt. I did not get defensive. We listened. We agreed on a thing. We ordered a couch. Easy, I thought. This can be easy. It is not always easy, of course. No marriage is. But we had, I realized, an unfair advantage. Most couples meet, go on dates, move in, and then, somewhere in year 2 or year 5 or year 10, they finally start having the hard conversations that they probably should have had on date 3. We had done those conversations in reverse. We had started with the hard ones, the ones about family, faith, children, money, values. We had built the foundation first, and then we were decorating the house. We decorated the house. We got a dog, not a big dog, a reasonable dog. We went on road trips. We cooked. I learned to make my mother-in-law's macaroni and cheese, and I learned it from her, on the phone, and it was a whole afternoon. Lauren learned to make my mother's stew. We went to church together on Sundays. We prayed together before bed. We built our little life, brick by brick, and we liked living in it. People used to ask us, "What is it like being famous?" I always wanted to laugh, because our life did not feel famous. It felt like any other newlywed life. It felt like laundry and grocery lists, and which light bulb is out. It just also had a lot of cameras in the background sometimes. For a while, the cameras were the strange part. The pod's experience had come with a lot of fine print. We were not allowed to tell people what had happened at first. We had secretly been married for a long time before the show aired, so we had the strange experience of being two people who had just gotten married and were trying to live a normal newlywed life, but we had to do it in hiding. We could not go to the grocery store together for a while. We could not go out to eat. We had to stay in our apartment and pretend for the world that we had never met. That part was hard. I am not going to lie. There were nights when I wanted to take my wife out to dinner, the way a newlywed wants to take his wife out to dinner, and we could not go. We would order in. We would make it nice. We would light candles. But it was not the same as sitting across from her at a real table in public and having people not know we had done the craziest thing either of us would ever do. When the show finally aired, everything changed. Our faces got big. Our story got out. The pictures of our wedding, the clips of our reveal went everywhere. My mother called me crying one day because someone had recognized her at the grocery store. My father called me to ask, respectfully, what an algorithm was. Lauren's mother had to start screening her calls. Lauren's phone buzzed off the table and then off the nightstand. And then we had to turn her notifications off at night, or we would never sleep. It was a lot. It was also, in its way, wonderful. We got letters, thousands of letters, from people who had watched our story and found something in it. Women who had been single for too long and thought we had given them hope. Couples of different races whose families had been hard on them, who saw my in-laws dancing at our reception and got teary-eyed. People who had been told their whole life that love was this one specific thing, and we had, by existing, proved otherwise. It was humbling. Lauren said to me one night, "We have a platform now." I said, "We do." She said, "We should use it right." She said, "We should be honest with everything, with our joy, with our mess, with whatever is coming, because other people need this. Other people need a real marriage on the internet. There is too much fake." I said, "Yeah, baby, I am in." We did not know that night what being honest with everything was going to cost us. We did not know the next thing coming. We did not know that the next chapter of our story was going to be the quiet one, the hard one, the one we would live through mostly in doctors' offices. We did not know. We just knew we had each other, and we were a team. We were going to find out how good of a team. Chapter 13. Lauren, the dream of more. I had wanted to be a mother my whole life. I do not want that to sound like I had been a pageant of baby dolls since I was 2. I had not been. I had been a regular kid. I'd played soccer and sat in trees and wanted to be a marine biologist for a week in 3rd grade. But somewhere underneath all of that, quiet and constant, had been a knowing. I was going to be somebody's mama one day. I was going to have a little one who called me that word. After Cameron and I got married, and after the dust of the show settled, and after the quiet years started to settle in around us like a blanket, the knowing got louder. I would look at him across the kitchen, stirring a pan of something, with an oven mitt on the wrong hand, and I would think, "You are going to be such a good father." I would see him with his nieces and nephews, holding a toddler on his hip, like he had been holding toddlers since he was a toddler himself. And I would think, "Oh, look at my husband." I would see a little black girl and a little white man on a playground, giggling, and the girl had curls like me, and the man had a red beard like him, and the universe would tap me on the shoulder like, "Baby, are you watching?" I was watching. I started talking to Cameron about it, gently at first. I was not a woman who was going to pressure her husband. I had seen marriages get torn up over that kind of pressure. I was going to bring it up, a little at a time, and see where we were. He met me there immediately. He said, "Baby, I want that too. I have wanted that since before I met you. I have wanted that since I was a kid on a playground, imagining who my future kid was going to be. I am ready when you are." We decided to start trying. That is the soft phrase people use, start trying, like it is a little project, like it is a hobby, like you buy a thing at the store, plug it in, and it works. We started trying, and nothing happened. At first, I did not worry. I had been told the way every young woman gets told that these things can take a minute, that bodies are bodies, that stress can do a thing, that the first few months are really the warm-up. 6 months went by, nothing. 9 months, nothing. A year, nothing. I had a line in my head, borrowed from my mama, that I kept leaning on. Slow does not mean stop. Slow does not mean stop. Slow does not mean stop. I would chant it to myself in the bathroom when another test came back with 1 line instead of 2. I would say it to myself at brunch when a friend quietly announced she was pregnant, and I had to catch my own face before it fell. I would say it in the car on the way home from a baby shower, where I had smiled through pink balloons and somebody else's happiness, because that is what grown women do. Slow does not mean stop. But I will tell you, inside me, a quiet, steady ache was starting to build. Cameron saw it. I will never forget the first time he said the word aloud, the word I had been dancing around, the word you do not want to be the couple that has to say. We were on the couch. He had his hand on my foot. The game was on the TV that neither of us was watching. And he said, "Baby, do we need to go see somebody about this?" I nodded slow. I said, "I think maybe we do." He said, "It is not anybody's fault." I said, "I know." He said, "Whatever it is, we are in it together." I said, "I know." I leaned into him. He put his arms around me. The game kept on doing its thing. And I closed my eyes, and I thought about my mama's line, and I thought about the list I had written years ago in a leather notebook, the list of a man who would stay. Slow does not mean stop. My husband was staying. He was right here. Whatever was coming, we were going to meet it together. Part 5. The Long Wait. Chapter 14. Cameron. The first number. There is a specific way a doctor tells you something hard. They sit you down. They speak carefully. They do not use big medical words because they have been trained out of that. They use plain sentences, and they watch your face while they say them because they want to know how to pace the next sentence based on how you took the last one. I will not forget the face of the first doctor who told us the news. She was kind. She had salt and pepper hair pulled back at the nape of her neck and a silver bracelet on one wrist, and she folded her hands on the desk in front of her, the way my grandmother used to fold her hands before grace. She looked from me to Lauren to me, and she said, "I have your results here." She said, "I am sorry, but this is going to take some more help than we had hoped." She did not say infertility. She did not use that word. Other doctors would, later. At the first appointment, she said, "It is going to take some more help." And somehow, the gentleness of that phrase made it worse, because I could feel her choosing it carefully for us. Lauren's hand found mine on the armrest between us. Her hand was cold. I remember that. Her hand, which is almost always warm, was cold. I said, "Thank you, doctor." I said it out of reflex. I said it because I did not know what else to say. And she smiled at me, gently, because she had seen a lot of husbands say thank you out of reflex when they did not know what else to say. She walked us through the next steps. She talked about medication. She talked about procedures. She talked about a process called IVF. And she talked about what it would ask of us, and what it would cost, and what the success rates were, and how they changed with age, and how they changed with particular diagnoses, and how we should not get our hopes too high after any one round, because bodies are bodies, and bodies are not on our schedule. Lauren nodded through all of it. She asked good questions. She took notes. She is a note-taker when she is scared. The notes are how she holds onto control when control is the thing she wants the most. When we got in the car, I did not start driving right away. I sat in the driver's seat with my hands on the wheel. I looked out the windshield at the parking lot. I did not want to look at my wife, not because I did not love her, because I loved her so much that looking at her in that moment was going to undo me. She said, "Cameron." I said, "Yeah, baby." She said, "Can you look at me?" I turned my head. She was already crying, silently, tears just running. She had held it together in the office because she is Lauren Speed, and Lauren Speed can hold it together in a doctor's office. She was not holding it together in the car. I unbuckled. She unbuckled. I pulled her into me over the center console, the way you do when the center console is a stupid obstacle and you do not care. She came into my chest. She cried into my shirt. I held her head with one hand the way you hold a baby's head. I felt her whole body shake. She said, "Cam, am I broken?" I closed my eyes against her hair. I said, "No. Baby, no. Absolutely not." I said, "You are perfect. You are not broken. Your body is a good body. This is a thing bodies do sometimes. This is not about who you are. This is not about our love. This is a thing we are going to walk through, and we are going to walk through it together, and we are going to come out the other side." I said, "You hear me, Lauren?" She said, "I hear you." She said, "But I want to be a mama." She said it 3 times. She said, "I want to be a mama. I want to be a mama. I want to be a mama." And the 3rd time she said it, it broke out of her like a little sob, and I just held her. I held her in that parking lot for I do not know how long. I want to tell you something about being a husband. You sign up on your wedding day for sickness and health. You sign up for good times and hard times. You sign up for richer and poorer. Every husband nods at the altar when he hears those words. You think you know what they mean. You do not know what they mean until the moment you are sitting in a parking lot with your wife's tears in your beard, and she asks you if she is broken, and you have to be the one to answer. Your wife is asking you whether she has failed at the one thing she wanted most. Your wife is in pain like you have never seen her in pain, and you are the man who promised to carry her when she could not carry herself. I carried her. I will always carry her. I did not have an answer to the bigger question. I did not know why this was happening to us. I am a scientist. I know how bodies work. And sometimes knowing how bodies work makes it harder, because you know exactly how many little things have to go right for a pregnancy to happen, and you know exactly how many little things can go wrong. I could not pray the knowing away. I had my own kind of faith, but I had the facts too. What I had, though, was her, and what she had was me. I drove us home. We did not talk much in the car. She kept her hand on my thigh. I kept one hand on hers. We got to our little apartment. I ran a bath for her. I put in the bubbles she liked. She sat in the tub, and I sat on the floor next to the tub with my back against the wall. And we were just two people in a bathroom for a long time, not saying much, not needing to. Before we went to bed, I knelt next to our bed, and she knelt next to me, and we prayed out loud. I had not been a big out-loud prayer growing up, but Lauren had taught me. She prayed first, and then she squeezed my hand, and I went. I said, God, we are tired. I said, we do not understand this. I said, we are not going to pretend to. I said, we are going to trust you. I said, we are going to trust Lauren's body. I said, we are going to trust each other. I said, please send us a child. We are ready. We are good people. We will love him or her so, so, so well. But if it takes a little longer, please give us the strength to wait well. I said, in the meantime, keep us close. Lauren whispered, amen. We got in bed. She fell asleep on my chest eventually, and her breathing slowed, and her whole body let go in the way it does when she finally surrenders to sleep. I lay awake for a long time, looking at the ceiling, with her weight on me. I thought about my wife. I thought about the list she had written in a leather notebook years ago about a man who would stay. I thought, baby girl, I am not going anywhere. I said it into her hair so she would hear it in her sleep. I am not going anywhere, Lauren. I am not going anywhere. Chapter 15. Lauren. The injections. A person will tell you when you have not been through it that IVF is a medical process, a procedure, a treatment, words like that, clinical words. IVF is not a clinical word to the woman who is going through it. IVF is a calendar full of little sticky notes in pink highlighter. IVF is a refrigerator full of small glass vials that you cannot drop, cannot freeze, cannot warm up, cannot mess up. IVF is an alarm on your phone at the exact same time every day, and if you miss that alarm, you have to stare at the ceiling at 3 in the morning and wonder if you just blew the whole cycle. IVF is your husband, who is a scientist, memorizing which needle is for the morning and which needle is for the night, because you are shaking too hard to read the labels. IVF is a room in your house that you start to avoid because the refrigerator is in it. IVF is the first time you realize that your body is not a thing you live in. It is a thing you are currently fighting with. I am going to tell you what it was like, not because I want anybody's pity, but because I know I am not the only woman who has been in that room. I know, in fact, that there is a woman reading this right now, or listening to this right now, who is in that room tonight, who has the vials, who has the alarm, who has the husband who is trying so hard, who has the ache. I see you, sister. I was you. The shots were the hardest part at first. Not physically. Physically, they were quick. Little jabs. I could handle that. But mentally, every shot was a little reminder that my body was not doing this on its own. Every shot was a little whisper of, you could not do this, Lauren. You are not enough, Lauren. You are the reason for this, Lauren. I did not say those whispers out loud. I did not even fully believe them. I knew, in my head, that my body not cooperating was not a character flaw. I knew that. But the whispers came anyway. They come when you are hoping hard and your body is saying no. Cameron gave me almost every shot. I want you to see this scene, because I do not think people see this scene enough. A grown man sitting on the edge of the bed in his sweatpants with a small glass vial in one hand and a tiny syringe in the other. He is quiet. He is focused. He is reading the label because he does not want to mix anything up. He is warming the vial in his palm because he read online that warm vials sting less. He is drawing up the liquid, slowly, the way a scientist draws up a liquid, tapping the syringe to release any air, checking the dose against the sticky note on the fridge. Then he looks up at his wife. His wife is sitting on the edge of the bathtub, with her pants pulled down on one hip, and she is crying a little, silent crying, because it is shot number 400 and something, and she is tired, and she does not know why her body is being so stubborn, and she hates this part of her day. She tries to smile at him. She tries not to let him see. He sees. He kneels. He puts his forehead on her knee for 1 second. He says, "Baby, you ready?" She says, "I am ready." He says, "Look at me." She looks at him. He does the shot so gently it is almost a kiss. She flinches a little. He does not. He pulls the needle out. He puts a little cotton ball on the spot. He rubs the spot with his thumb in slow circles, the way his mother used to rub his arm after a bee sting when he was 5. He says, "You did so good." She laughs through a tear. She says, "I did not do anything. You did it." He says, "No, baby. You stood still. You stood still while I did something hard to you that you did not want me to do. That takes strength. That is doing something." He kisses her on the forehead. He puts the stuff away. He goes in the other room and cries quietly for 2 minutes, where she cannot see him, and then he comes back and rubs her feet and puts on a dumb show that will make her laugh. That was my husband. That was my IVF partner. I want every woman in that room tonight to know, if she does not have a husband like mine, that she deserves one. And if she has one who is not doing this well, she should tell him what I am telling you. Tell him about the warming in the palm part. Tell him about the forehead on the knee part. Tell him about the cotton ball. Tell him about the gentle rubbing. Tell him that his wife is not weak. She is being so strong. She just needs a witness while she does it. Cameron was my witness. We did the first round of IVF. I will spare you most of the medical details because they are not the point. The point is what happened at the end of the round. It did not take. Round 1. No. I remember the day the doctor told us. I remember driving home in the car. I remember walking into our apartment and sitting on the floor in the hallway and not being able to move for about an hour. I remember Cameron sitting down on the floor next to me, and neither of us trying to fix it, and neither of us trying to say a thing, because there was not a right thing to say. We tried again. Round 2. We waited. We prayed. We hoped. We did not hope too loud, because you learn not to. You learn to keep your hope down low, close to your chest, because hope that is too loud gets knocked down. Round 2. No. I cried so hard after round 2 that Cameron carried me, literally, from the bathroom floor to the bed. He did not say anything. He just picked me up and took me and laid me down and got under the covers with me and held me like a child. He said, "We are going to take a break for a minute." He said, "We are going to go on a trip." He said, "We are going to eat a lot of food we do not cook." He said, "We are going to sleep in every day." He said, "We are going to be okay." I nodded into his neck. I could not see how we were going to be okay in that moment. I want you to hear that honestly. There was a night, I will tell you, where I did not see it, where I sat in my bathtub and looked at the tiles and wondered if I was being punished, wondered if I had done something wrong, wondered if God had decided this was not a thing that was going to happen for me. I do not mean to say those nights came often. They did not. But they came. Every woman in that room tonight knows about those nights. Cameron would come and get me out of those nights. He would find me on the bathroom floor, or on the back porch, or in the kitchen with a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago, and he would sit down next to me and say, "Baby, come here." I came. I always came. We tried again, and my body kept saying no, and I kept saying yes. And Cameron kept saying, "We are not done." And my daddy, 1,000 miles away in Georgia, kept calling me every Sunday and saying, "Baby girl, how you doing?" And I would lie to him. I would say, "I am fine, Daddy." I would say, "We are good," because I was his baby girl, and I did not want him to worry about me, even when he should have been worrying about me, even when, as it turned out, he had his own things to be worried about, things he was not telling me either. You know how families are. You know how love is. Sometimes you love each other by not telling each other everything all at once. My daddy and I loved each other like that. And then, one afternoon, the phone rang, and my mama was on the other end, and her voice was not right, and everything was about to change. Chapter 16. Cameron. Losing Bill. I need to tell this chapter carefully, because it is the chapter my wife will not be able to read for a long time. It is about the day we lost her father. I want to start with a thing that I think gets missed about losing a father-in-law. People treat it like a kindness loss for the husband. Like, "Oh, he lost the old man. That is sad. Give him a pat on the shoulder." People do not always understand what a father-in-law is. Bill Speed was not my father-in-law. Not really. Not the way the word is usually meant. Bill Speed was the man who taught my wife how to be loved. Bill Speed was the reason Lauren knew, when I walked into her life, that she deserved a man who would stay. Bill Speed was the voice in her head when she was scared. Bill Speed was the nod at the wedding. Bill Speed was the Sunday afternoon phone call. Bill Speed was my wife's first love, the way a father is a daughter's first love. When he got sick, I want you to know, I had loved him for a couple of years already. He had taken me in, quietly, gradually, the way a Southern father takes in a new son. He had invited me onto the porch with him, the first time I had visited their home, and he had pulled out a second chair next to his chair, and he had handed me a glass of iced tea without asking if I wanted one, because that is how he showed his love. He had taught me to grill a steak his way. He had called me once, without Lauren knowing, just to check on me after I had mentioned, casually, that work was heavy. He had called me son. He had called me Cam. He had hugged me every time we got in the car to leave, and he had held on for an extra second each time. I loved him, and he was sick. Lauren knew, I knew, our families knew, but we had not, as a family, put the word out loud yet. He had not wanted us to. He had wanted his girl to keep hoping for her baby. He had told me on the phone, "You keep her focused on the future, son. We are going to be okay for now. She is going to be a mama. That is what I want to see." That was what he had said to me. On the phone, months before. When my mother-in-law called Lauren that afternoon, I was in the kitchen. I heard Lauren pick up. I heard her say, "Mama, hey." And then I heard the sentence break. I heard the sound she made that I hope I never hear again in my life. I ran. I ran down the hallway. I grabbed her. She was on her knees. The phone was in her lap. Her mother was on the other end, talking quietly, and Lauren was shaking her head again and again, like if she shook hard enough the truth would not land. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." I got the phone. I put it to my ear. My mother-in-law said, "Cameron, he is gone." I said, "Mama, I am so sorry." I said, "We will be on the next plane." I said, "We are coming." I knelt next to my wife on the kitchen floor, and I took the phone gently out of her hands. I put my arms around her. I did not try to say anything. I did not try to fix it. I did not try to make it make sense. I just held her. She cried in a way I had not heard her cry before. It was not the crying from the bathtub. It was not the crying from the doctor's office. It was a deeper thing, a ground thing, a thing that came out of her from a place that did not have words. We flew down that night. We walked into her parents' house where I had eaten steaks on the porch, where I had been called son, and Bill Speed's chair on the porch was empty. The iced tea was still in the fridge. His boots were by the door. His jacket was on the back of the kitchen chair where he had hung it, probably that morning. His mug was in the sink. My wife stopped in the hallway. She looked at the jacket on the chair, and she just said, "Daddy." I took her into our old guest room, where we had slept so many times. I laid her down. She cried herself into an exhausted sleep with my arms around her. And after she slept, I went out onto the porch, and I sat in Bill Speed's chair for the first time, and I cried for my father-in-law. I cried for the man who had handed me his daughter's hand at the altar. I cried for the nod. I cried for the grill lessons and the iced tea and the phone call when work was heavy and the "call me Cam." I cried for everything I had not said to him yet and everything I was not going to get to say. I cried because he was not going to see our baby, the baby we had been trying for, the baby he had told me on the phone he wanted to see. That baby was going to arrive, if the baby ever arrived, into a world with an empty chair on a porch in Georgia. I cried for Lauren. I cried for Lauren the most, because I was losing a father-in-law. She was losing her daddy, and there is nothing in the world that equalizes those two losses, not even the deepest love. She had been his baby girl for 30-something years. She had been Cam's wife for less than 10. The ratio was unfair. There was nothing I could do to fix the ratio. What I could do was carry her. I could carry her on my chest through every night of that week. I could carry her through the funeral, my arm around her waist, holding her up when her knees went soft at the casket. I could carry her through the eulogy, where she got up and spoke, because she is Lauren Speed, and Lauren Speed will get up and speak, even when her whole body is shaking. I could carry her back to Atlanta. I could carry her up the stairs of our apartment. That is what I was going to do. I was going to be the man who stays. Chapter 17. Lauren. The graveside deal. A couple of weeks after my daddy passed, I went back to Georgia by myself. I did not tell Cameron ahead of time. He would have wanted to come. He would have insisted in his quiet way on getting on the plane with me. But I needed to do this part alone. I needed to talk to my daddy. I rented a little car at the airport. I drove the familiar roads. I stopped at a gas station and got a small bouquet of flowers. Nothing fancy, just a handful of sunflowers, because sunflowers were my daddy's favorite. He used to grow them in the backyard when I was little. He used to cut them and put them on the kitchen table one at a time, so that when my mama walked in, there was always one new yellow thing looking at her. I drove to the cemetery. I parked the car. I walked the path. I found him. His stone was still new. The grass around it was still new. I stood there for a minute, with the sunflowers in my hand, and I looked at the letters of his name, and I read them out loud, the way you read a name to yourself when you are still trying to convince yourself it belongs to somebody who is gone. Bill Speed, beloved husband, beloved father, beloved grandfather, even though he had not gotten to be one yet. But he was. Even then, he was. Because my mama had insisted on that word on the stone. She had said, "He is a grandfather. Our grandbabies are out there. He is waiting for them. He is just waiting over yonder now. Put the word on the stone." I smiled at the stone, the way you smile at a man who has just been bragged on. I sat down. I crossed my legs. I put the sunflowers on the grass in front of him, gently, like I did not want to crush them. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. I said, "Daddy," I said, "I am so mad at you." I laughed a little, through the tears. I said, "You hear me, Bill Speed. I am so mad at you for not holding on. I am so mad at you for leaving me. I had plans. I had plans for us. I had plans where you were going to be here for every one of them." I said, "I know that is not fair." I said, "I know you could not help it." I said, "I know you held on for as long as you could." I said, "Cameron has been wonderful. Cameron has been everything you said he was going to be. You were right about him. You were right about the red beard. You were right about the kindness. You were right about all of it. Thank you for telling me, back before we even met, to listen to my gut. Thank you for telling me that if I came home with a ring, you would deal with it. You dealt with it, Daddy. You walked me down the aisle. You put my hand in his. You trusted him. I said, "He has got me." I said, "We are still trying, Daddy. We are still trying for that baby." And then I said the thing I had come to say. I sat up a little straighter. I looked at the stone. I took a breath. I said, "Daddy, I am going to make a deal with you." I said, "If you had to check out early, if that was not up to you, I am going to accept that. I am going to try anyway, but it is only fair." I said, "It is only fair that you send me down that grandbaby." I said, "You got some time up there now. You got some time to hug the ones you missed and to meet the ones you wanted to meet. You got time to sit at Jesus' feet for a little while. I know you got a lot to catch up on. But while you are up there, Daddy, I need you to use some of that time to pick me out a baby." I said, "You pick him out for me." I said, "You pick him out good." I said, "You send him down here to me and to Cameron. You send him down with your eyes, if he can have them. You send him down with my mama's laugh. You send him down healthy, Daddy. You send him down strong. You send him down with your stubbornness even. I will take your stubbornness, if that is what it takes. I said, you owe me this, Daddy. I said, I am your baby girl, and I want to be somebody's mama. And if you cannot be here to watch me be it, then at least be there to send me him. I am not asking for a miracle. I am asking for a little favor. I said, you hear me up there. I sat for a long time in the grass. The sunflowers were still on the grave. A bird was singing somewhere. A breeze came through the cemetery and moved the flowers a little. I took that as a yes. I went home to Atlanta. I did not tell Cameron exactly about the deal I had made with my daddy. I told him I had gone to the grave. I told him I had cried. A lot. I told him I had talked to him. He did not press me. He knew, without being told, that the deal was between me and my father. He just held me and said, baby, I am glad you got to talk to him. 2 weeks later, we did another round of IVF. Cameron did the shots in the bathroom in the warm way he always did. He rubbed my arm with his thumb. He kissed my forehead. He said, you did so good. We waited, and the phone call came. The doctor's office called, and my phone was on the counter in the kitchen, and Cameron was across the island from me, and I answered. And the nurse on the other end used a voice that was different than any other voice that nurse had ever used. She said, Lauren. She said, are you sitting down? She said, honey, you are pregnant. I dropped the phone. I did not mean to. It just fell out of my hand. I grabbed the edge of the counter. My legs went. Cameron was around the island before my knees hit the floor. He caught me. I was on my knees, on the kitchen tile, with my husband's arms around me, and the phone was upside down on the counter, and the nurse was saying, hello, hello, Lauren, are you there? I was laughing. I was crying. I was saying, Daddy. I was saying, oh, Daddy, oh, Daddy, oh, Daddy, oh, Daddy. I put my face against my husband's shirt, and I sobbed into his chest, and he was crying too, and he did not even know yet. He had not heard the nurse say the word. He had just read my face and known. I told him. I said, Cam, baby. She said, I am pregnant. He went still. He put his hands on both sides of my face. He looked at me. He looked me dead in the eyes. He said, Lauren Speed Hamilton, are you serious right now? I nodded. I was nodding like a crazy woman. I was nodding with my whole body. He started to cry. He put his forehead on mine. He said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I whispered to him, through tears, the thing I had been whispering to my daddy for 2 weeks. I said, he sent him. I said, Daddy sent him. Cameron nodded against my forehead. He did not ask me what I meant. He knew. We sat on the kitchen floor, the two of us, for a long time. We did not move. The phone on the counter finally stopped chirping. The nurse understood, I think. Nurses understand. My daddy had made good on the deal. Our baby was on the way. Part 6. Ezra, Chapter 18. Cameron, the word pregnant. I want to describe a moment that is still, to this day, the best moment of my life. Not the wedding, not the reveal, not even the first time I laid eyes on my son, although that will come in a later chapter. This moment is smaller than all of those, and it happened in a tiled bathroom at 7 in the morning, with me in my sweatpants and Lauren in one of my t-shirts. It was the morning after the phone call from the nurse. We had been told by every doctor we had ever seen not to get too excited too early. We had been told not to assume anything based on a first blood test. We had been told to confirm at home with a regular pregnancy test, and then again at the next appointment. We had been warned, gently, that there could still be bad news, that a first positive was not a guarantee. Lauren wanted to take a regular test, just to see the word. So that morning we stood in our bathroom together, and she held up this small plastic stick, and we set it face down on the counter, because she said she could not watch. She said, "Cam, we will look at it together." I said, "Okay, baby." We sat on the edge of the tub. We held hands. We watched a timer on her phone count down from 3 minutes. 3 minutes felt like 3 days. Neither of us spoke. The timer went off. Lauren took a long breath. She looked at me. She said, "Ready?" I said, "Ready." We picked up the stick, and there it was. Plain as day. Not a faint line. Not a maybe. Not an ambiguous smudge you have to squint at. A clear, dark, unmistakable word printed in block letters on the small window of that stick. Pregnant. Lauren saw it first. She made a small sound, not a squeal, just a small, held-in, high-pitched little noise, like the inside of a song. She put her hand over her mouth. She was looking at the word, and then at me, and then at the word, and then back at me. She said, "Cam." She said, "It says it." She said, "Cam, the word is on the test." I looked at it. I looked at the letters. I looked at my wife, with her hand over her mouth, and her eyes shining, and her other hand squeezing mine so hard that my fingers were turning pink. I will tell you what I did. I got down on my knees on the bathroom floor. I did not plan to. I did not even mean to. My knees just went, and I put my arms around her waist, and I pressed my face against her stomach, against the soft of her, right where he was, all 6 cells or 8 cells of him or whatever he was at that moment, and I cried. I cried into her shirt. She put her hands in my hair. She did not say anything. She just held my head against her. We stayed like that for a long time. I could feel her breathing above me. I could feel her stomach move a little when she laughed, softly, between tears. I was talking. I did not realize I was talking until I noticed my own voice, muffled against her stomach. I was saying, "Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Hi, baby." I was saying, "Thank you, Bill." I was saying, "I will love him so well. I will love him so well. I will love him so well." Lauren got down on the floor with me eventually. She came down slow, the way she was going to come down slow for the next 9 months, careful of her body now in a new way. She wrapped her arms around my neck. I wrapped mine around her. We were 2 people on a bathroom floor, holding each other, looking at a plastic stick on the counter that had changed everything. It had changed everything. I want to write down here, for whoever is reading this, who is sitting in a bathroom somewhere right now with a test in their hand, or in their drawer, or in their mind. We see you. We were you. There were nights we did not see how we were going to get here. There were nights when the word seemed like a word for other people, for other bodies, for other stories. I cannot tell you why it came for us when it did. I cannot tell you the science. I cannot even tell you the theology. I can only tell you that one day, on a bathroom floor, it came. And when it comes for you, if it does, you will know. If it does not come the way you hoped, I want you to know too. I want you to know that your worth is not in this word. that a woman is not broken because a stick says one line instead of two, that a man is not less because his wife is not carrying a child yet, that love is not measured in children, that a family can look 100 different ways. We believe that. We lived that. We still believe it. But for us, that morning, the word came, and my wife and I sat on the bathroom floor in the early sun, and we started to plan the rest of our life around a very small, brand new person, and we could not stop smiling. Chapter 19. Lauren, carrying him. Pregnancy, when you finally get it, is a whole new kind of weight. I knew that before I was in it. I had listened to my friends. I had read the books. I had lived through a lot of my own failed months where I had felt my body and wondered, is this it? Is this time different? I had trained myself a little to be careful with hope. It is a different training when the test is positive, because now the hope gets big again, and your body becomes its own little tender country. You are tiptoeing around. You are carrying a person. You are carrying a whole person inside of you. You are the only person on earth who is currently home to this particular soul. That is a wild thought to sit with. I sat with it. I sat with it a lot. I kept a manifestation journal. I had kept one for years, since before Cameron, back when I was single and hopeful and writing lists of husbands in leather notebooks. The journal had moved through every phase of my life. It had gone to Mexico with me. It had come home. It had been written in on nights when I was laughing and nights when I was crying. In it, months before I had known I was pregnant, I had written a line. I had written, Ezra William Hamilton will be born healthy and strong. I had picked the name before I had the baby. I had picked the middle name, William, for my daddy, Bill, William. I had told Cameron about the name early in our marriage, over a dinner where we were allowing ourselves to dream out loud a little. And he had said, Ezra. Yeah, that is a good name. Ezra Hamilton. I like it. We wrote him into existence, it felt like. We wrote him into existence on a page, and then my daddy, from wherever he was now, sent him down. I took pictures of my belly every week. I sent them to Cameron during the day when he was at work, and he always wrote back with a heart and a silly caption. He called me Mama more and more as the weeks went by. He would hand me my water in the morning and say, Here, Mama. He would walk up behind me in the kitchen, put his hand on my belly and say, How are you and the boss doing? He was practicing. He was tasting the new word. I was practicing too. I would stand in front of the mirror at night with my hand on the rise of him, and I would say, Hi, baby. Hi, Ezra. I would say, I am your mama. I would let the word fill the room. I would say, Grandpa Bill says hi. He is watching you grow. He loves you already. So do I. I would say, Daddy loves you too. Your daddy is the best man I know. He is going to be such a good one. You are going to be so lucky, little boy. You are going to be so lucky. I carried him through the quiet months. I carried him through the loud months. I carried him through days when I was so tired I could not remember what I had eaten for lunch. I carried him through nights when Cameron would rub my feet on the couch and we would try not to laugh too loud at a show because the baby would kick when we laughed and we did not want to wake him up. And then, in the last stretch, something happened. My body, which had been so good to me through the pregnancy, started to struggle. My blood pressure started climbing. I had swelling in places I did not know could swell. I had headaches. I had spots in my vision at one point, which I thought were ordinary, and which Cameron, being Cameron, immediately looked up and made me call the doctor about. The doctor said the word I did not want to hear: preeclampsia. If you have not heard that word before, I will tell you what it means in the simplest way. It means your blood pressure is dangerous in a way that can threaten you and the baby. It means you have to be monitored. It means you might need to come in early. It means the doctor is going to be careful with you. It means Cameron's jaw is going to set very quietly in a way I recognize, and he is going to start planning. They kept me under close watch for the last few weeks. I was supposed to go, originally, to 40 weeks, like most pregnancies are supposed to. I did not make it to 40 weeks. I did not make it very close. Ezra had other plans. The doctor called us in a few days before our scheduled date and said, "Lauren, it is time. We are going to induce. Your body is telling us it is time. Your baby is strong. He is going to be okay. But we need to do this now." I nodded. I was scared. I want to be honest about that. I had been scared a lot of times in my life, but I had not been scared this specific kind of scared. I was not just scared for me, I was scared for him. Ezra, the small person who was not out yet. The small person I was about to have to get out. Cameron drove us to the hospital. I remember looking at his hands on the wheel. Solid, steady, scientist hands. The same hands that had warmed vials in the bathroom. The same hands that had pulled me up off the kitchen floor the day my daddy passed. The same hands that had held my hand at the altar. Those hands were going to be the first hands that ever held our son. I put my hand on his, on the gear shift. He turned his palm up to meet mine. He did not say anything. He did not need to. We drove into the rest of our lives. Chapter 20. Cameron, the hospital. I will not lie to you. The hospital was the most afraid I have ever been. I kept my face even. I kept my voice steady. I held Lauren's hand. I answered every question the nurses asked me. I nodded when the doctors said things. I remembered, somewhere in the middle of it all, that a husband's whole job in this moment is to be a calm lake for his wife to look at when she is scared. I was the lake. Underneath the lake, though, my mind was running the numbers. I am a scientist. I had read about preeclampsia. I had read more about it than Lauren knew, because she had asked me not to read too much, because she said, "Baby, it is making you scared, and I need you to be the not scared one right now." So I had stopped talking about it, but I had already read it. I knew what could go wrong. I knew the things that could go wrong for mothers. I knew the things that could go wrong for babies. I knew the window of time we were trying to get through, and I knew what was at stake on both sides of it. I did not let any of that onto my face. Lauren's face was beautiful and tired. Her hair was pulled back. Her cheeks were a little flushed. She was working hard, the way women work hard in labor, with a quiet determination that I have seen nowhere else in human behavior. She was in pain. She did not complain. She breathed the way they had taught her to breathe. She squeezed my hand when a contraction came. She made a low sound from deep in her throat and let it carry her through. I told her, every few minutes, "I am here. I am right here. You are doing so well." She would nod without opening her eyes. The doctor kept a calm voice. That is one of the things I will always be grateful for. The staff at that hospital, I need to say, were absolute angels. They did not make Lauren feel like an emergency. They made her feel like a woman having a baby. They made her feel normal. They told her, "You are doing great, Lauren. You are a champ. We are right here with you." At one point, very late, when things were the most intense, I leaned close to her ear. I whispered. I said, "Baby," I said, "I want you to know something." I said, "If you get tired, you rest. You do not have to be strong for me. I've got enough strength for both of us right now. You just focus on bringing this baby out. I will do everything else." She nodded, eyes still closed. She gripped my hand. She said, "Thank you." She said, "Stay." I said, "I am not going anywhere." Ezra William Hamilton arrived a little earlier than we had planned. He did not arrive on a date on our calendar. He arrived on his own date, on the first day of a new month, on the first day, in some ways, of our whole new life. He came out and he cried. That is the moment I will carry with me, always. My boy, my little boy, opening his lungs for the first time, filling them with air that he would go on to fill them with for the rest of his life. He cried, and they said, "He is okay. He is okay, Mama. He is okay, Dad. Your son is here." They put him on Lauren's chest. I watched my wife's face. I want you to see her face. I want you to really see it. She had been laboring for a long time. She was exhausted. Her eyes were half closed. She was still a little unsteady. And when they put that baby on her chest, and she looked down, and she saw him for the first time, her whole face lit up in a way I did not know a face could light up. It was the light I had seen at the altar. It was the same exact light. I had seen it once before, walking down an aisle in a white dress toward me. I saw it again in a hospital bed with a baby on her chest. She was shining. She looked up at me. Her eyes were full of water. She said, "Cam," she said, look at him. Look at what we did." I was crying. I was crying so hard the nurse handed me a tissue. I bent down. I kissed Lauren on the forehead. I put my hand, very gently, on the tiny back of my son. His back was warm. He was so small. My hand covered almost all of him. I said, "Hi, Ezra." I said, "Hi, buddy." I said, "We have been waiting for you." He made a small sound against his mother's chest. His eyes were closed. His little hand curled into a little fist. His hair, what there was of it, was dark. His skin was new. I looked at my wife. I looked at my son. I looked at the two of them together, my entire world on a hospital bed. And I thought, everyone in my life who has ever loved me was getting me ready for this. My mother, my father, Bill Speed, Lauren's mother, the village. They had all been teaching me how to love someone like this. I was ready. I was going to do this well. Chapter 21. Lauren, October 1st. They laid him on my chest. All the pain went away. I do not mean that in the melodramatic way people mean it. I mean it medically. I mean it physically. I mean it soul deep. The body had been doing one thing for hours, and then, the second my little one was placed against my skin, the body decided, the work is done. The storm had passed. My boy was here. I looked down at him. I do not have the words for what I saw. I want to try anyway, because I owe it to him, and I owe it to every mother who is going to hold her own version of him one day and want to know what this moment feels like. He was tiny. He was warm. He was a real, whole, living person. He had a little shoulder and a little shoulder on the other side. He had 10 fingers. I counted them. I had to count them. That is a thing mothers do. You count them because you cannot believe they are all there. He had 10 toes. I did not count those because Cameron counted them for me. Cameron was counting everything, quietly, like a checklist. Cameron is a scientist. Cameron was going to make sure everything on the list was there. Ezra was there. Every piece of him. He was perfect. I looked at his face and I saw my daddy. I want you to know that. I looked at my son, minutes old, and I saw, somewhere in the set of his little mouth, the shape of Bill Speed, the way his upper lip sat, the way his brow came down a little when his eyes squinted against the light. He was a Hamilton. He was a Speed. He was a little of both, and he was entirely his own person. And I saw my daddy in him, the way I had asked my daddy to send. I whispered, "Good job, Daddy," I whispered. "You did good up there." Cameron was over my shoulder. He had his hand on Ezra. He was crying in the quiet way Cameron cries, with no sound, and with his whole face a little bunched up, and the tears just going wherever they went. He kissed my forehead. He kissed the top of Ezra's head. He said, "Hi, buddy." He said, "Welcome, son." We named him. We had known the name for a long time. We had written it in my manifestation journal months before there was even a positive test. Ezra William Hamilton. Ezra for the meaning of the name. William for my daddy. Hamilton for the man at my side. My 3 men. My past, my present, and my future. The nurse asked very gently if we wanted some time alone with him. We said yes. She slipped out. The room went quiet. It was just the 3 of us for a minute. My husband, my son, and me, and the wires of the monitor beeping softly, and the window, which was starting to show the first gray of an early morning. I looked at the window. I looked at my baby. I said, "October 1st. I said, "That is a pretty day to be born." Cameron said, "A perfect day." I said, "A little earlier than we planned." Cameron said, "But perfectly on time." I smiled up at him. He smiled down at me. We were not saying anything fancy. We were not giving speeches. We were just 2 tired people who had made it through the hardest thing we had ever tried to do together, and we had our prize. Our prize was a warm little body rising and falling with his first breaths on earth against his mama's skin. I let my eyes close. Cameron put his hand on both of us. I was a mother. I was finally, after everything, a mother. And somewhere, up where my daddy was, I swear to you, I felt him nod, just like he had nodded at our wedding, just like he had nodded at every good thing I had ever done. I felt that nod through my chest. He said, "I see you, baby girl." He said, "You did good." I said, back to him, in the quiet of my head, where I kept all my best conversations with him, I said, "No, Daddy, we did good." Epilogue. Both of us. The love seat. We are sitting on our porch. It is evening. The light has that color it only has in autumn, when it is getting ready to go early, and the sky turns a shade of pink and gold you can only describe by showing someone a picture. Our dog is in the yard somewhere, chasing nothing. Our bassinet is between us on the porch. Our son is asleep in it. His little mouth is parted. His little fingers are curled. We have been married 7 years. We have known each other a little less than that. The math is a strange math when you meet someone the way we met. We like to say sometimes to the people who ask that we have known each other since the pods. But the truth is, we have known each other since before the pods. We were looking for each other for a long time before we found each other in those dark little rooms. Some part of us, the part that writes lists in leather notebooks, had known what the other person would be like long before we ever heard their voice. Lauren says, every so often, that we are the same person. She says, Cam, I think we are the same person. I think we have matching brains. We say the same things at the same time. We make the same jokes. We get the same annoyed about the same things. We get the same happy about the same things. We are one person in 2 bodies. I laugh when she says it. I tell her, that is not scientifically possible, baby. She says, hush. You know what I mean. I do. If you are listening to this story and you are still single or still waiting or still hoping, we want to say one last thing to you. It may not look the way it looks in a movie. It may not arrive on the schedule you had written on your planner. It may not come when you are ready for it. It may come when you are the most tired. It may come from a place you did not expect. It may come with a red beard. It may come through a wall. It will test you. It will ask things of you. It will make you kneel on a bathroom floor more than once, for more than one reason. It will put you in a hospital. It will put you in a cemetery. It will put you on a dance floor. It will put you on a porch. It will make you a better person if you let it, if you show up, if you stay. We are not experts on love. We are not anybody's experts on anything. We are just one couple who got lucky and who got unlucky and who got lucky again and who kept showing up for each other because we had promised we would. We kept the promise. We are going to keep the promise for as long as we get. That, we think, is the love story. That, we think, is the whole thing. If you have not found yours yet, keep going. If you have found yours, hold on. And if you are the one sitting on a porch right now with the person you picked and a child between you, or a dream between you, or just the quiet between you, say thank you. Say it out loud. Let them hear it. Thank you for staying. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for walking through that hallway toward me with your hand on your heart. Thank you for everything you ever did to bring us here. The sun is going down on our porch now. Our son is still asleep between us. Our hands meet over the handle of the bassinet. This is the end of the story. This, we think, is also the beginning. End. This is a Books by Barron production. Developed for booksbybarron.com and the Books by Barron YouTube channel. This audiobook is a work of inspirational fiction, dramatized from the publicly shared story of Lauren Speed Hamilton and Cameron Hamilton. Scenes, interior monologue, and dialogue are imagined for narrative purposes. The life milestones referenced in this book, the couple meeting in a televised experiment, their engagement before seeing each other, their marriage, their 4-year journey with fertility, the passing of Lauren's father, and the birth of their son, Ezra William Hamilton, on the first day of October, are drawn from interviews and public statements the couple have shared with their audience over the years. This work is offered in celebration, not in reporting. It is a love letter to a love story, written for every listener who has ever waited on a prayer.